we have a small issue with this engine. It smokes way too much when we first start it up, and it vibrates. It's not firing up on all the cylinders right away. The third manifold here, I can feel it. It's a little colder. I put my tester on it when it's running, and it takes a lot longer to heat up than the rest of them. It does smooth out, and the smoke does go away when it warms up, but still I want to make sure that there's no issues. Now, this engine's been sitting for a while before we put it in here at the owner's place, and I'm wondering if some of the rings are stuck, and so a compression tester will help us find that. The compression test, you can only use it to compare one cylinder to another. If you can see the original injector, that tip is a lot longer than this, so that's that much compression that we're losing. So you can get readings anywhere from 100 to 400, and they don't tell you much other than you can compare one cylinder to the next, and we can add oil to the cylinder after we do our initial test. What that'll do is seal the rings with the oil, and if the reading goes up, then we know that there's a ring issue, and we can try and fix that by either putting acetone in there and trying to free it up, which is what the customer wants, or needs a rebuild. Now, a blow-by test is also a good way to check it, and we'll do that in another video. For now, we're just going to do the compression test. I'm going to start at the front, work our way to the back, compare the readings, and then do a wet test and see what happens. Very straightforward. Just take your injectors out. There's a puller for that. All it is a 15/16 socket that goes around here, screws this out, and you can try and grab with a pair of adjustables so you don't squeeze this, and try and twist it, and if you're able to twist it, you should be able to pull it out. What I have done for stuck injectors, I got the tool somewhere, I'm not exactly sure where, is take a scrap line and I welded a collar over top. So with the nut all the way down in, I put the cap on with a scrap line with a collar that went tight up against here, and then as you crank this, it'll actually pull the injector up and out. If you do have stuck injectors, that's a neat little trick. So here we go with our number one test. So all I've got on that one is 100 pounds, which doesn't mean squat because I need to compare it to the other cylinders. I got about 120, so that one's down to about 100. 25, you can tell that engine's turning over faster because I pulled the other injectors out. 125 again. Also 115 or so. So we got some good news from our injector shop, which is Agri-Truck Machine. They pop tested the injectors for me, and 2 of the 6 were no good. What they do is they put it on a tester that has a hand crank on it, and it has a gauge on it, and tells you when the injector pops. But it actually is the top half, and in very simple terms, is a giant spring, and there's a machine fit little piston in the bottom half, and the fuel goes down beside, and when it hits a certain pressure, it overcomes the pressure of the spring and lifts up on that piston. What that does is allow fuel to go down into the tip and spray out. The higher, these will pop at around 2400 psi, 2800 psi, somewhere around there. I don't even know exactly. And when the fuel comes out, it's atomized, which means it's in tiny particles. It has lots of room for the oxygen to get around it, allows for a burn. These 2 were dripping, so it's constantly dripping before it pops, and that fuel is big, massive globs compared to the atomization, so that's not burning right. So when this one was shaking in the beginning, it's because there wasn't the right amount of fuel coming out at the power stroke, and it's dumping fuel in there when it shouldn't be. And that's not burning off right, so that's where that white smoke was coming from. So hopefully that clears up the shaking and the rough idle and the smoke when it's cold. And we grabbed 3 more injectors from our spare engine in case one of those was bad, and we dropped them off. They're testing those. When those are good, we're going to drop it back in again. We're still waiting for the acetone to do its thing. It's not a bad thing because this engine was sitting for a while. So we're going to change the oil again, put the clean injectors back in again, and then fire it up and see if that takes care of the smoking problem, and then bring it off to the drive shaft shop. So here we go. So I did all the wet tests, and they all went up about 25%, which is about the same. I'm going to see if I can get it better if the rings are stuck at all by mixing 50/50 ATF mix with acetone. Just put in a little container roughly so I know how much is going in, and then put the pistons down, and then just pour it in until it bubbles out. Do that for all the cylinders. I don't drain the oil, I leave the oil in there actually. The reason for that is the acetone and ATF mix will settle into the oil and kind of mix with the oil rather than just sit at the bottom of the oil pan. And then before I start it up, I'll most definitely drain the oil and then run it for a bit. And I might even change the oil again right after that. Then I'm gonna run it for about 5,000 K or so and then do an oil analysis on it. And the oil analysis will tell me if there's any pieces going in the oil and will also tell me how much blow-by is going into the oil. A good sign of what this engine is doing. So here we go. Okay, all the cylinders are full. Just gonna plug the holes to make sure that nothing goes in there over the time that it's sitting. All the injectors are getting tested in town. Check and make sure it's got a nice clean spray pattern, that it's popping at the right time. Make sure that the white smoke isn't just the injector that's stuck open. Once they're out, they're easy and cheap enough to test. It only takes them about a half hour to test 6 of them. Otherwise, I just pop the injectors back in again. But we'll check the cylinders again in a few days, top them up if we have to, and then in the meantime, we're gonna finish the last of the wiring. Here we go.
So follow a variety of projects that include conversions and repairs to anything from Ferraris to chainsaws. And check out the Tape Boss, my newest invention that's coming to market. And remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich.